like the worst
Right?
energy.
Every time we start with the weirdest fucking energy. I was hoping like in person it would be...
It's worse.
Yeah, it's worse. It's somehow worse.
I think it's because I also came in like half drenched from the rain outside, carrying a Yeti microphone like a child.
Right? Oh, no, you can't see anything out there.
No, it's just
a reflection of my kitchen. I can add rain effects in post.
Yeah, and we'll just say you didn't take this part out, and
Yeah.
we'll just say, oh no, they can hear it because
Exactly.
that microphone's that good.
Exactly. Just such a sensitive microphone. That's what you want. You want a microphone that picks up as much background noise
Yeah,
as
that's not what you're
possible.
looking for. That's not what you're looking for in a
Right.
microphone.
This is our End of the Rainbow. We're just going to hang out and talk for like 20 to 30 minutes about the show. We have a couple of your questions, not a whole lot, but we have a couple so that we can talk through those, hang out, vibe, have a good time.
Yeah. Sounds good.
We have to do an intro.
Oh. Have you picked your intro yet? Has that been like a thing that people have decided on yet?
No, no one's voted on any of the intros.
You should just keep changing it until someone has a freaking decision.
What's up, Streaming Rainbow? Welcome on in, all of you little raindrops, to our End of the Rainbow. It turns out Mads and I live approximately a 5-minute drive apart from each other. So we wanted to do something a little special and actually do this one in person. And just hang out, vibe on my tiny little couch.
It truly is so
It's
small.
so small.
It truly
We're
is.
at the edges of the couch, like leaning out, like to maximize, make it look a little bigger. But yeah, kind of just aftercare for the emotional journey that we just went on. So yeah, I think we have some viewer questions that I'm definitely going to get to.
Mm-hmm.
But to kind of kick it off, I'd love to hear your overall impression of the story, of the game, your experience, now that you've had a little bit of time to sort of decompress.
Yeah. I think... So it comes in waves for me. I guess like my processing of it, like during was much different than thinking about it after. So like during the game, I really enjoyed the like kind of trying to figure out what the point was going to be throughout all of it, or the connecting theme, not the point, because I understood the point pretty much going into it because you were pretty clear about themes and such.
Right.
So I knew what we were kind of going for and the feel we were going for. But as far as like the story point or the story thread that I was looking for, that was really fun to try and think. 'Cause at first I was like, oh, this is just going to be like little vignettes.
Yeah.
That don't connect really. Then I was like, wait, hold up. These people know each other. Wait. And so I was able to like, it was really fun every time to like uncover a little bit more about what the thing you're going to be getting at. And then one thing I really enjoy after is kind of thinking back and reflecting and thinking about all the little things that maybe I quote unquote missed while I was in there. Like, for example, I just realized it's literally driving down. The whistle. There's sirens on like first responder stuff. So I was like, and literally in my car as I was also listening to, incidentally, not podcast. Wow. You put me in front of a microphone. I'm like, I'm on a podcast now.
Yeah.
No. I was listening to the playlist I had made for the conductor.
Getting into that space.
Yeah, just kind of thinking back through everything. I was realizing also as I was listening to the songs, I'm like, dang, it almost feels like I made this playlist after as well, because a lot of the songs actually went in line with what each of the characters were. And I was like,
nice. Look at you.
Yeah, but overall impression in a long-winded way was 10 out of 10. Would recommend, but I thought it was a very like not too much of a mystery to where I'm like, I have no idea. I'm just kind of floundering while I'm playing, but enough to where also I was able to understand where we got to and then even discover things after the fact, which makes a really good RP experience in my personal opinion.
Yeah. Nice. I think for me, going into this, I had a lot of ideas. My cat is...
As usual.
My fork. Every time I'm trying to like pick her up to like come hang out.
She's like, nah.
And she's like, nah, I want to use these little scratch.
She wants to be a problem.
Right. She likes to hang out on top of this like 7-foot bookcase. she likes to jump up there and hang out.
That tracks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, so going into this, I had a lot going on sort of in my own personal life, and we talked about it a little bit in sort of intros and things like that. And for me, this was a like really escapism. I had come into this with the idea of like Fork, are you gonna be a problem? Look at her. Look at
There
this
she
little
goes.
Muppet. This little Muppet that lives in my apartment. The idea for the game sort of kicked off with me wanting to explore a more emotional side of role playing as a storyteller, as a DM. A lot of my games tend to lean more like comedy and slapstick and improv and things like that. And I felt like coming into this, getting into a more emotional space, especially an emotional space that didn't feel like it was just for sort of like shock value, wasn't a strength of mine as a DM. And I wanted to use this as sort of a vehicle for that. And right after I had pitched the idea to Mads, and we had, I think, recorded the first episode, my whole life just
It truly did.
It's been a wild ride. And so I actually wound up not being able to dedicate as much time to this as I was hoping. I still achieved the goal that I wanted, and I was able to dedicate a lot of time to it, but it wound up being like almost moving more to a form of escapism for me versus like a place of like true like growth and exploration. So I'd love to do a season 2 at some point, assuming my life calms down, where I have more time to sort of plan out those touchstones, those moments, those feelings, and really like build deeper emotions. Because I feel like you can see it in the episode. I self-critique real all the time. So this is like me going over my own self-critiques for the series as a whole. What I do, what I change. But if you watch the first episode, I think the first episode nailed the vibe.
Yeah.
First episode felt so good and like a really strong start. And I think it worked really well because the emotions sort of roller coastered throughout the episode. We had ups and downs, and I felt like that management of emotions that I've been working on, or wanted to work on, shined in that episode in particular. And the other episodes weren't quite as well choreographed, in my opinion, and there wasn't really that emotional weight to them until the very end. So I think that, for me, is sort of a reflection of my own life and something I'd want to focus on if we were to do sort of another season. That was a weird tangent. Thanks for going on that ride with me.
Yeah, no, I love it. As another like self-critiquer, I can relate to like the like look immediately watching something and be like, I would have done that differently. Because I was watching myself and I was like, okay.
That's what I look like on the screen. Okay.
That was a choice, Mads. That was a word choice we used there.
Right. But overall, like, I would say this is the best thing I've made ever. Like, absolutely loved it. I loved what we built together. I loved the impact, the story that we told, how it all came together. Like, absolutely, this felt like a magical experience
for sure,
from the beginning to the end. As hectic and crazy as it was, and as much as it could have been better or whatever, right? It was so much fun and so freaking cool.
Yeah, for sure. And that kind of leads me into one of my questions I had for you. And I think I have this a lot whenever I'm playing games with you. I'm like, where did you think of all this? Like, and especially because this happened before your life imploded. You know, like you'd had some things that have happened that made me kind of think, I can see where this theme is important to you. But I was wondering like where you got this idea to make like this train station, and all of a sudden it turns into, actually, we're back in real life and this is a first responder thing.
Yeah, I would love to say that this was like all me and that I'm a genius, but this was heavily inspired. I mentioned it a couple times by a game called Spiritfarer.
Okay.
And in Spiritfarer, spoiler alert for anyone who wants to play Spiritfarer, highly recommend it. Turn off your ears now. I'll put up something in post for when you can turn your ears back on. But in Spiritfarer, it's kind of the same idea of you have this boat and you're traveling through this spirit world, picking up spirits and sort of helping guide them to the Everdoor.
Gotcha.
The end
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a very similar reveal at the end that your main character was actually a nurse.
Cool.
And that these are like all of the people that she's helped throughout her life, and that there's actually this meta narrative on top of the initial narrative that you can see threads in retrospect through. And so I was like, okay, that's a really cool idea. I don't want to take it exactly as is. I need to put a little twist on it, like file the serial numbers off. And so, okay, what are some things that have that same idea? And this is where it gets a little bit wacky. I have a different world that I'm working on.
Of course you do.
Doing world building right now. The impetus for that was actually visiting the Mob Museum in Las Vegas.
I think I remember you mentioning a little bit for this.
Yeah. And I was like, man, mobsters aren't focused in like modern media a lot. There's like the mob movie era.
Yeah.
But in particular, I feel like they're not focused on like fantasy. Yeah. And there's so much like to pull from, so many cool ideas and things like that in that mob world. I'd love to take it. Yeah. But what's in a similar vein that is focused on in a lot of modern media? Pirates.
Amen.
But I don't want just like mob on boats. So what has a similar sort of setting? And for that, like, what do you get from a boat? Why are boats such a good place for stories and adventures? Well, you're out in a place where anything can happen. You're stuck in a small space with the rest of your party, and you're on a vehicle that you have like ownership and agency over. So what are some other things that could fulfill that? And after a lot of searching and things like that, I wound up on trains for this world. This like idea of the mob got really into like the train business and wound up like basically just taking over trains and transportation. And when the car revolution would have happened, because the mob had such a tight control on transportation, it started a war, basically. And the train side won.
Damn.
And so you have trains just everywhere. It's like the main form of transportation and things like that.
Transportation.
Yeah. And so this is a really long story. I pulled from that idea. I'm like, okay, like boat to train. I've already made this sort of connection. So let's do the same thing in this game and turn the boat story into a train story. And let's build out like some more religious shenanigans around it to mask the ending a bit more. And build out this idea of the station master and these rituals and things like that.
Totally worked.
So that's where the sort of idea and impetus for the story and the setting came from.
That's really cool. I like how also I really want to play in that world you're building now. But like I like how it's kind of like you're taking little bits of your creative homes and putting them in other places. I just like that idea that like there's like you're taking one thing from one world you've made and putting it into another. That just seems really wholesome to me, and I really enjoy that aspect. That like they're all like these little threads that connect all of them. That's just I like that. That's really cool.
I do too, and it lets me take whatever my current obsession is and put it into whatever.
Yeah, it's like max. You're oh my gosh, you're min maxing on your
Min-maxing
hyperfixation.
my hyperfixations, yes.
You heard it here, guys. You just gotta min max that shit.
All right. So from Courtney, one of the other wonderful DMs, storytellers, GMs in Streaming Rainbow, she asks, "What made you choose the system for the last stop?" That's a very good question.
That's really good.
I think, right here.
Conveniently.
Put
it there just for this.
One Child's Heart. So, I first listened to this game being played in a podcast called the One Shot Podcast, which I used to listen to a lot of. I don't listen to it so much anymore, but the idea is that they play through different systems. They play like 1 to 4 episodes worth and like go to another system. And they featured One Child's Heart, and they told a really emotionally impactful story. So when I first was like, okay, I want to build an emotional story, I need to find a system that allows for that. And unfortunately, there's actually just not a lot of systems out there, right? And so your option, the kind of the go-to a lot of the time, is either a small indie game like Penny for Your Thoughts or things like that, which is another wonderful game that can take you on an emotional journey. But those are meant to be played in like one contained session, not meant to be played multiple times. So I was like, okay, that's a good fit for a stream, but maybe not for an actual show.
Mm-hmm.
The other option is to go with just like a rules light system and kind of fudge it, like Fate or something like that. But that didn't feel good because I'm a very big proponent of like finding and using systems that build the gameplay that you want. And systems sort of create behaviors in players and DMs.
Yeah.
Like for D&D, if you dedicate half the book to combat and monster stats, then your game's inevitably going to end up there, right?
Yeah.
And that's just how the mechanics and the book and all of that were built. So I don't like wrangling a system that's not meant for a thing into doing that thing.
Yeah.
So after a whole lot of like hair pulling, and I spent a long time actually trying to find a system, I was like, okay, I'm going to have to build a hack on top of something. And I remembered One Child's Heart and remembered that is like sort of the most emotional game I've heard and like seen. It's like, okay, let's start there. Is there something that we can pull from there? Like, what would it take to actually turn that into the game that I want? And it wound up shaping the game a lot. So the system itself, in terms of the way that we explored memories and the way that we connected with characters. Originally, that wasn't going to be as core to it. Originally, there's going to be more like getting to know the characters here and now. But that's not what the system is for. The system is for exploring memories specifically.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that's basically what we get to in the story, is exploring these memories together with these people. So what if we cut out that other part? Expand the exploring memories part, and then you basically just have One Child's Heart.
Yeah.
Which is a really simple system with very simple mechanics that can tell the emotionally impactful story that I want to tell. And it explores a lot of the same themes of you can't change the past, of finality, and of ambiguity.
Yeah.
That we're exploring here. So I wound up just being a really good fit once I sort of more formed the story and game and how that would flow.
Yeah.
So the system definitely impacted it. But we got there originally just from wanting to tell a more emotional story.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think of the system?
I really liked it for the purpose that it was, for a couple of reasons. I liked how simple it was, so it wasn't distracting trying to figure out, okay, here's what I need to do, in the midst of also trying to stay really in touch to the emotional what's the word I'm looking for? The emotional gravitas I was trying to connect to for this character. So it was nice because it's like, okay, are you rolling 3 dice or rolling 2 dice, my friend? Or adding some numbers onto that. So that was a
Right.
cool way that was so easy to pick up and do. I also felt like that I'm a fan of games, and also I've gotten more and more into the idea of, the mechanics working for the actual character that you're using, and them and using kind of like what you're using actually working and getting your character in the best place that can be, or they can be. And so I liked that, how it really worked out that usually I was rolling the most amount of dice I could roll, and that's how it should be, like, or in my brain. Whenever you're playing the game, with good intentions in mind to like get your character to succeed in the best way that they can.
Yeah, absolutely. And the system itself actually mentions that in the book. It's like, hey, like, for the most part, you should be rolling 3 dice and adding at least 1 to every roll.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not, then your characters are going like real off script for some reason, or you're like choosing to handicap yourself for the story.
I did that a couple of times.
Yeah.
With the station master, with Silo, the conductor.
Yeah, on Master Lee.
Yeah.
When you're first like, okay, let me connect to her on in her way, on her level.
Exactly.
And, like, completely failed.
Yeah. It's just like, sometimes though, I wasn't trying to fail. I'm just a bad roller, even on virtual dice.
Well, you would have had to, I think, on that roll, get double 6s to have succeeded.
Yeah, but there's other ones where I failed that, like, I still was rolling a decent amount of dice.
Yeah.
And just failed. But yeah, for that one where I was intentionally trying to fail, because I was like, I did feel like it just worked with that moment too. I really feel like that the conductor would have actually been trying, like, okay, compose yourself, attach to what makes sense to her.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, I'd love to segue, before we go to our other audience question, to that sort of connecting to the emotional gravitas. I feel like we talk a lot, and you can read a lot of articles as like, hey, DMs, here's what you do, here's how you be a better DM, here's how you build a better story. But for that connecting to the emotional gravitas, what was that like? Do you have advice for other people trying to like tap into and build more emotional depth in their characters?
Yeah, I thought a lot about this, because I was thinking, what do I actually do to help myself both be present in the story and pay attention to, maybe also when there's maybe other game mechanics I have to be paying more attention to, and then also like be able to somehow come out with a random monologue here or there. And I think the work for me starts before I even go into a session to do an RP game. And for me, it looks a little different for a lot of people, but for me, one thing that really helps me connect is music. So making I keep doing
Making
that.
a podcast list.
Making a playlist for my characters. I've done that ever since I started, for the first character I ever played, to the conductor just now, as being the most recent character I've played now in an RP setting. I've always made a playlist, and I will listen to it. I try to listen to it before I do each session, or at least one song from it. And that helps me connect to, not necessarily like, okay, we're leaving Madison behind and we're going to be this person, but it helps me kind of get in the brain space, because I think you do, like with anything, you do need to change the way you're thinking before you get in there. That way you're able to be really focused on it. Another thing that I do for myself as well is really try and make sure that I also leave like kind of outside distractions away, make sure my phone's on silent. And this seems kind of intuitive for some people, but actually can be really distracting during gameplay, whether even you're playing a home game or something like that. Any reminder of the outside world can bring you out of it just like that. And so I really try and minimize all distractions as possible, and get myself in the brain space of immersing myself into the world. As far as like other parts, I also really make sure that I don't try too hard. And that sounds like bad advice. Sounds like how do I say this in a better way? But one thing I used to do was try and like plan out in my head, oh, this would be a good thing to say if this comes up. And I actually don't do that anymore. Instead, I kind of will let myself pause a little bit more. Don't be worried about awkward silences. Silences are meant to happen in life and in games. That's where the good shit really happens. When you pause and give yourself time to process what's happening, and even using that time for your character to process what's happening. And so I give myself time to pause and then allow myself to respond as the character would. Because I've already done that work beforehand of kind of understanding who my character is with the music. I even sometimes will answer like personality quizzes for my characters and things like that. So doing stuff like that. You actually mentioned this one time too to my sister, but to like literally pick out your character's favorite drink, pick out your character's favorite clothes, what they wear every day, those types of things. So really attaching yourself to your character by giving them a personality outside of here's what I want for this game and here's their mechanics and stats. Um, and then the last thing that I actually really liked was putting on a costume actually was really helpful.
Yeah.
So I think that actually it's something I'm going to take into my home games is even if it's not like a full out costume like I did for the conductor, but even like a little scarf or a pin or some type of thing that is like, okay, it's on. Because tangible and sensory feedback is super important for getting yourself like psyched in and tapped into something. Hopefully that made sense to somebody, but
yeah, or even like what's it called? It's like Disney maxing. For home games, you can also take sort of like a Disney bounding approach where you don't have to get into a full costume, but like you said, like maybe you wear a pin or maybe you wear something that's reminiscent of the character.
Yeah.
That's like the key, I think, is just intentionality. Like
exactly.
I'm intentionally trying to like push myself just a little bit more towards that character in this moment.
And that makes me think about my other point that really helps me is be okay with it being awkward and trying out new things and making the mistake, because that was something I had to really get over in my own RP journey, which Bastion was there for when I first started out, is making mistakes and kind of things not really working or things falling. You may try something out and be like, the way I said that sentence wasn't sentencing, and I actually did that in the middle of our recording sometimes, like well, that's just what happened. But
the magic of editing, we can
magic of editing, that's, but also like what's nice in a home game is you can just say, oh well, wait, hold on guys, I need to like think about this for a second or retry it again. Or also as a home game, you just kind of move past it and move on. So embracing the fact that it's going to feel a little, also embracing the fact it's going to be a little uncomfortable. It's hard to, I think we don't touch on it enough, that it's hard to be, when you're creating something like this and kind of pretending to be somebody else and like create this story, we have that intrinsic thing of not wanting to mess something up. Mess it up. That's honestly where the good stories are anyways. Mess things up. Going into monologue moment for Mads.
No, mess things up.
I
love it. I think if we had to pick a phrase to describe your roleplay style,
it's messy. Oh my gosh, you're so fucking right.
As a DM, something that I tell my players a lot when I am going into like heavier, more emotional scenes is to sit with the discomfort. Because that to me as a player is one of the hardest things. And that's also with my player group, like I said, we tend to do more like comedy, lighthearted stuff. And the impetus whenever there's like an emotional moment is I'm going to crack a joke and I'm going to ease the tension. I'm going to like get us out of this moment with a little bit of levity. And you have to sit with that discomfort. If you want to have those emotional moments, you can't hit that levity escape hatch every single time, right? And I think that's something that we did really well in the finale, was we did have some levity in those moments, but for the most part, we sat with that discomfort and just, like, experienced it. Let it live, let it breathe, let it have space, let it find its place. And I think made those moments more powerful.
Right. I think that's also what goes back to the point of having pauses as well, and not feeling like you have to fill every little space with some words as well. That can really help with letting discomfort sit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Our next question is from Julia, a wonderful, wonderful player. Had the pleasure of playing a Bluebeard's Bride one-shot with them, which is another one of my favorite systems for exploring emotional depth. They ask, were there any other ideas you had of characters for the conductor to guy that ended up being cut?
Good question.
Oh, yeah. Fork's trying to add levity.
Yeah, see, she's not letting us sit with the discomfort.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I had a lot of different directions and things that we could have explored that didn't that just didn't make the cut in terms of the story that I wanted to tell and the things that I wanted the conductor to experience. The big thing for me was I wanted each experience to feel very unique. And so, for example, one of the things that I was considering exploring was cancer. And uh, like that experience and dealing with that, of that knowing that inevitability, but that like I'm not sure when it's going to happen, not sure when I'm not going to be able to be me anymore. And like that was something that I wanted to explore, but it felt too close to Miss Gray's story of sort of like passing away at an old age, of like more natural like consequences, like things like that. So that felt a little bit too close.
Yeah.
There's another option I was considering for Master Lee of someone who was angry that they died, but that felt a little bit too close to Jacob. Jacob already had some of that sort of aggression and like more of that dark energy. Like, okay, I don't necessarily want to push towards someone who's like angry that they died. I think that, and there's like other sorts of ideas around that, but most of them I wound up cutting just because they were too close to stories that we had already or were going to explore. Something else for me that this segues into, and a question I get a lot, is like, how do I prep? How much prep do I do? What does that look like? And I'm an incredibly low prep DM. I do very little preparation. I can show you the prep I did for the finale, and you will laugh. You will laugh at the prep. Hold on, where is it? Not this one. I don't think I deleted it, but it'd be funny as hell if I did. Yeah. This was my prep. That was my prep. It's going to show up backwards. Maybe I'll, in editing, flip it. I wanted to make sure I didn't forget the names of people.
We've done that before.
We would never.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. We remember all the names.
Exactly. So I very much rely on improv and reacting in the moment to what my players are experiencing. And of course, like going into the finale, like I had the stories in my head already. So there was like secret, not written down prep of like, okay, like I know the finale is going to feature the reveal that you're a first responder. I don't want that to be immediately obvious from the first one. I want there to be confusion, and I want it to be obvious in the second one.
You can see that on my face, confusion.
Yeah. Right. And that's why I knew it was going to be a lot of me sort of monologuing and like being ready for that and figuring out ways to create space. But most of the time, I'm bouncing off of my player's vibe, which is why it's really important for me to have a particular type of player that I can bounce off of their vibe, that is excited and interesting, that is engaged, things like that, because that's, for my style of DMing, necessary. It was a similar level of prep for a lot of my other sessions, and I only prepped one session in advance, outside of knowing where the finale was going to be, so that I could react to, okay, this is how Mads was feeling. This is like what that journey felt like. What's a good contrast to that? What's a good sort of next step to explore, next facet to add? And so I only prepped one character at a time. I didn't have like a bank of characters that I was pulling from.
Okay.
And for most of the characters, I got their vibe. I got a gimmick, which Mads helped me with a lot of the gimmicks.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a like sentence concept for the 3 memories that I wanted to explore. And even from that, I broke from those concepts a lot, depending on how the conversation with the spirit went. Of like, oh, this memory or this type of memory would be more impactful to explore
Yeah.
in this moment. So, all that to say, it's not that like there were characters that I had that I didn't pull from. It's more like what I was considering when I was building that next character and planning out that next session, that next experience.
Cool. That's really cool. That's interesting for me to hear too, because I was wondering if you had all these characters planned out, or if you, like what you said, you just kind of came up with them after every session we had.
Mm-hmm.
It was outside the finale.
Yep.
Kind of like having a plan for what the finale would be like a little bit. That's interesting. I had actually thought, I was like, is he reading from a like monologue he wrote, or is he just monologuing right now?
Just monologuing right now.
That was beautiful then. Like a little bit commotion for that.
Thank you.
You know, that was beautiful, because I was like, damn, those are good monologues.
Yeah. And that actually comes into like the next thing that I really want to work on as a DM is more structured stories, because I wind up, so something that an old friend of mine used to talk about is styles of writing.
Yeah.
And like gardeners versus like planners. And you have people that like Brandon Sanderson like really like plan out and think out and build out a structure for their stories that you then like go through and have like a very clear plot. And then you have people like George R. R. Martin that are more gardeners that like build out a premise and then sort of explore it and tend to this premise to see where it winds up. And I think there's pros and cons to both approaches, and you see that a lot in DMing too. I'm definitely more on the gardening side of DMing, of like, here's this premise, here's this sandbox, let's go explore, let's build something cool and like see where it goes. And the problem with that, the main drawback to that approach, is eventually after like tending to this garden long enough, it's hard to then bring that to a close that feels satisfying.
That's good. Yeah.
And so I want to build stories with more structure. My compromise so far has been having a North Star and having like checkpoints in my games of like, okay, this is the next big event that I want to get to.
Yeah.
And we're going to like explore and like tend to this garden, but I'm going to start dropping hints and pulling towards this big event, and then we're going to get there. And building that out has been my compromise thus far, but I feel like it's not something that I do super well. So my next sort of at-home game, that's something I'm really hoping to explore.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that. It's interesting too about like wanting to work on structured stories. I feel like there is such an emphasis on like, let it kind of just happen, you know? But then there's also such a place for having a little bit more structure in your stories, because then you can build some of these moments a little bit easier. Exactly. And that satisfying end that you're pointing at, where it's like, okay, everything was, maybe not everything was tied up, because definitely that wasn't in this story. Not everything was tied up at all. But the ends that needed to be tied were.
Yeah. Okay. Those were our viewer questions. Do you have any final thoughts, goals, dreams, advice?
No, I think it was growing for me. Like you said, it was a growth thing for you as a DM. I think it was also a growth thing for me as a player. Though I do tend to be probably on the camp of telling the story versus being like the mechanics person at a table in general. Just the being in a game where that really was the meat of the thing was, yeah, you're talking, and that's kind of what needs to be happening right now, Madison, was really a big step for me, because I think it forced me also not to second guess myself and just kind of go for it and go for what I was feeling. So yeah, I would say that, to anyone in their next game, try and get out of your thinking brain and maybe use some more of your heart dice instead.
Hey. Yeah. And I guess my parting thoughts, again, I think this is the best, coolest, most impactful thing I've ever made. And absolutely treasure the chance to do it with Streaming Rainbow, the chance to do it with Madison. And yeah, this has been cool. Hopefully we can get Madison back for some more Streaming Rainbow content, maybe some one shots, maybe a sequel to this or whatever we build out next. But yeah, let us know in the comments what is your biggest takeaway from this story.
I would love to know that too.
Yeah. I think that's all we got.
Yeah.
I love your faces. I hope that you had a wonderful time listening to us ramble on this tiny couch with my insane cats. And I hope that you all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day, rest of your week. And I can't wait to catch y'all on the next Streaming Rainbow show. That's the rainbow that we're at the end of.
Yeah. We found it, guys. We found the end of the rainbow. We did it. Everything can stop now.
We did it. It's done.
Yeah. Peace, y'all.
See ya.